Welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience podcast, the podcast where we share candid conversations with women sharing their career journeys. My next guest is Charlotte Blackler, founder of Menopause-Friendly Menopause food range, which is specifically designed for busy, perimenopausal, and menopausal women. Welcome, Charlotte. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. It's actually the first sunny morning in Scotland for about a week.
Oh, we love that.
The birds are singing. It's looking good today.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And you must have, looking out your window, such an amazing landscape, the countryside. I'm in Leicestershire. It's not as good as Scotland, but, looking out the window is always a pleasure, isn't it?
Well, we're very lucky. I look right up a glen, but I have to say this summer has been a bit dismal because most days it's been rain that I've been looking at rather than sunshine. But anyway, these things are sent to try us. We'll not complain.
Now, Charlotte, can you talk to me about your journey and transition from working in pharmaceuticals? You talked to me about you're actually a science person to founding this menopause-friendly food brand that is available everywhere on a subscription service. How did you start out?
Well, as with all these things, it's usually from personal experience and from wanting to solve a problem that's your own problem in the first place. So pharmaceuticals was where I started my working career several decades ago now. No decades, actually, unsadly. And since then, I've had children. And I thought I would go back to work in pharmaceuticals, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it because I just didn't believe in the way that we do medicine. I would much rather that we prevented diseases rather than getting to a chronic state in the first place. And I genuinely believe that the majority of disease states could be managed with diet. So it's something like 75% of hospital admissions could be prevented if we actually just ate a diet that was in line with our biology, according to people like the Zoe team, Professor Tim Spector and people like that are beginning to say this out loud in the public domain so that people are understanding just how fundamentally important our food is to us. And our body is this amazing piece of biological kit that has fantastic feedback systems. So if something's lacking, something else tries to compensate. And, it's made to look after itself. It's made to keep us well at all times. But if you don't give it the nutrition that it needs and the nourishment that it needs to do that, then it can't function. And that's where all these disease states begin. With a dis-ease in your body becomes a disease later somewhere in life. And it turns out that menopause is exactly the same kind of thing. If we actually just ate plants that had the essential ingredients in them that we need to maintain a healthy balance in our hormones, then we can manage it without needing to resort to chemicals and supplements.
Yeah, there's a lot of documentaries that I watch on Netflix where obviously they're using celebrities to drive the message, but they're traveling to places such as Japan or South Korea or other countries where their nutrition has played a part in terms of longevity, less diseases, inflammation, etc. So getting out there, but I guess preventative medicine is not good for business in the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, I mean, having worked in pharmaceuticals, I know that it takes millions, tens of millions of pounds to bring a drug to market. And so unless you're going to receive a revenue from that on the other side, they're not going to do the scientific studies to start backing these things up. So it's in nobody's interest to do a load of scientific studies on saying how the diet is the main contributing factor to keeping us all well, because it doesn't make anyone any money.
It doesn't make any money.
But there are fantastic examples of cultures who do have lots of plant estrogens in their diet, normally, naturally. So you mentioned Japan, they have tofu, tempeh, miso, all soya-based products have very high plant estrogen content in them. And consequently, that keeps them, menopause symptom free as they go into this kind of phase of life. And the lovely thing is that they look forward to the menopause. It's a time of liberation. It's the end of that monthly horrible thing that we go through every month and dread and have, discomfort around. And so they celebrate the end of all of that. And in this country, it's just such a shame to me that we actually dread menopause. We don't look forward to it. And we don't celebrate it in any way, shape or fashion. So it would be really lovely if I can do something to change that for those women who are looking for a more natural kind of menopause.
So let's break it down to basics. For someone who's listening and has heard, they're thinking menopause is just a buzzword. What is menopause and what are the menopausal symptoms that you are trying to alleviate with your product?
Gosh, there's a huge long list of menopausal symptoms. I think it's up to something like 84.
Wow.
The trouble is, estrogen affects just about every system in the body. So that when you go through menopause and you start losing that biological estrogen that our body was producing to make us fertile, everything is affected, from our bones to our muscles to our brain. Well, all our regulatory systems, so the heat and things like that. So there's a huge long list of everything from brain fog to flushes to bone and joints and muscle deterioration. And it's not even just that you have to look after yourself in the perimenopause and menopausal stages, because when you get to the postmenopausal stage, if you haven't got any estrogen in your diet at all, then your cardiovascular disease spikes. And so does your potential for osteoporosis. So we need estrogen in our bodies all the time. And if we were eating a diet that was more in line with our biology, like in this country, we were growing a lot of flax in Scotland. And so they were probably eating lots more flax, linseed, because we were making linen up here. And they were, that was readily available. And that's really high in plant estrogen. So it's not just like soya-based things, broccolis and things, all those cruciferous veg. In bygone generations, everyone had a veg patch. They were feeding themselves. They weren't feeding themselves from the supermarket. So they were eating much more fresh veg that contained those plant estrogens. And we've just come a very long way from that now with the convenience of supermarkets. So we need to get back to getting those things back into our diet so that we don't suffer.
So what was your light bulb moment to really, to say, there's a potential for plant estrogens. I have got an idea here and this is something I want to pursue.
Yeah. So when I started with my perimenopause, which was probably about 2 years ago now, I'm 50 now, very, very quickly, my joints were extremely inflamed, really painful. I couldn't go down the stairs forwards. I was going down sideways like a crab. And my everything hurt, like my body hurt. And I just assumed it was some sort of onset of arthritis, like some juvenile arthritis. And I was just like, holy cow, I can't go through the rest of life like this because I can't even get downstairs. It was so painful to go downstairs. I didn't want to go downstairs. So I was finding myself working upstairs on my computer, just thinking, nah, I'll just wait another hour before I go down and make a cup of tea because it just hurt. But because I love herbology and plant science is my bag, I did know that there were lots of different herbs and spices that are good for inflammation in the joints. So I was putting turmeric in everything, scrambled egg and curries and just everything I could get turmeric into, and sages. And I have a breakfast and I was putting more flax seeds into it. And I was, just make all the things that I knew were in my kitchen cupboards that would be helpful. I was just eating more of them. And very quickly, it was like within a week or two, I was just like, oh, knee's not hurting. Knee's not hurting at all. Okay. And then I just thought, well, hang on a minute, because I was getting drenching night sweats as well. And I was just like, well, maybe I'm menopausal. Maybe this is the beginning. So started doing some research, looking at all the potential ailments that I could be struggling with that might be menopausal and not arthritis or something like that. And it turns out that that's actually what was happening rather than arthritis. But I'd managed it with food. Just because, food's my thing. And I think if you eat properly, then you end up finding foods that that are actually powerful on a normal dietary dose. You know, you're not having to eat an elephant-sized piece of broccoli every day to be able to get the benefits. It's just normal dietary levels. And I had a chance conversation with a friend who was living in Japan, and she's the same age as me. And I just said, I think I'm managing to eat my way through our menopause. It's I can find enough things in the kitchen that are really helping. And she said, oh yeah, that's why the ladies over here don't get the menopause symptoms. And I was like, pardon? She's like, no, they don't get it in Japan because they eat so many soy-based things that have got all these plant estrogens in them. I was like, why don't we know this? Why don't we know that there is a whole, 65 million women who don't suffer with menopause because they eat tofu? It's just like, why don't we know this? So I just thought, right, well, okay, I'll do some more research. I'll find out what foods can be easily incorporated into a daily diet, and let's just start there. So that was my light bulb moment, was that chance conversation, talking to my friend in Japan who was just like, oh yeah, they don't get menopause symptoms over here.
It's so interesting, isn't it, about how your nutrition is just playing a very big and fundamental part in your longevity, your clarity of thought, how you get around, your hormones. And there's now, I feel like there's an awareness in the world, or in the first world really, to say your nutrition is really important, and not actually what drugs can we pump into you to help alleviate these symptoms.
Yeah.
Everyone subconsciously, unconsciously really wants to focus on things that are good for us.
Yes. It is the tide is beginning to turn, but I still think that people really need to fundamentally understand, without being too evangelical about it, which I make no excuses for being so, because I think it is so important, is your food has the capacity to either kill or cure you. Mm-hmm. It's that basic. If you just eat rubbish the whole time, it's a diet of fizzy drinks and burgers, there's no way that your body gets enough nourishment to actually see you through to any kind of decent state of life. I end up going into hospitals quite a lot, and coming towards me are people who are massively overweight, just like lots and lots of people who are struggling with their mobility and clearly lots of other diseases because they're all in hospital. And I'm just like, we've become a nation that's become quite big. In quite recent times, we weren't all this size when I was a child. And it's just like, we're just not eating the food that our body needs, or we're eating too much of the wrong foods. And so that the NHS is going to have such a huge problem. Give it another few years, we're trying to cope with all this and deal with all this. So really, they should actually be making changes in what is available on our shelves and saying to the big food producers, do you know what? You've got to cut out sugar. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. Because as a nation, we're the fattest nation in Europe, apparently, and that will have consequences. I mean, food's not cheap. I raise livestock using the medicinal properties of herbs as well, because I didn't want to put antibiotics and hormones into the meat that my children were eating. And it takes a long time. It takes more than a year to get a roast dinner. It takes a long time. It's expensive. If you do it naturally, it costs money. There's no such thing as cheap food. If you are buying cheap food, you are paying somewhere else further down the line. There is no such thing as cheap food.
I mean, that is so true. Just even thinking about sugars, I always tell my children, sugar is the most legal drug out there. It's the one that you can see everywhere. It's addictive. It's in everything.
Yeah.
Trying to find products that have no sugar in them is very hard.
Yes. Really, really hard. So even before the menopause stuff, I have a cereal every morning because that's convenient to me. And I wanted a sugar-free something for breakfast. Oh my goodness, I found one thing in the whole supermarket, just one, and that had fruit in it. So it wasn't exactly sugar-free. It still had fructose in it, but it's just about impossible. So the muesli that I make has no added sugar. It has some sugar from the cranberries that are in it, but it has no added sugar because it's just unnecessary. We don't need it. We get everything we need from the rest of our food. I don't know why they think the consumer wants or needs it. It's changed our palates to the extent that we expect it now, almost. So I don't eat very much sugar at all if I can help it. I mean, I confess that I will be the first of the queue for the cinnamon buns. But, by and large, I don't eat an awful lot of sugar if I can. And so if my husband makes something and he puts a hoisin sauce in it or something, I'm just, it's so sweet and sickly and horrible. I'm just like, I can't actually eat this. I can't. But it's changed my taste buds
Your
somehow.
palate as well, yeah.
It's just
changed,
too much. Yeah. It's just overwhelming now. And I've tasted all the other flavors from the oats or from the seeds and the nuts, and they're actually delicious now, whereas before they were quite bland. But your palate actually just recalibrates, and you don't need the sugar so much.
So it seems like, Charlotte, starting your business has been threefold. One, through going through your own personal medical aha moment and saying something's got to give, but also your background in terms of understanding the science. And then thirdly, you also mentioned, growing livestock. So you have an understanding of nutrition and food and things like that. Starting a business is never easy. To actually then say, I now am going to be at the forefront of creating menopause-friendly food. What are some of the challenges that you've faced and how have you tackled them?
I think ignorance is bliss.
Yes.
I think I had no idea what I was getting myself in for. And that's the reason I thought that would be a good idea. I suppose I don't know how people would go about going into business, but my motivation wasn't to go into business. My motivation was to let women know that there was a third option to HRT or supplements. That actually there's something that genuinely works, that you're in full control of, so that you don't need to be going to a doctor. You don't need to be buying additional things to your normal grocery shopping list. You are in full control of how much you eat and when and what you enjoy and how you take that in. It's very hard to overdose on plant estrogens. I mean, you would have to eat an elephant-sized piece of tofu, so you'd never get through it. So it's fine. It's normal food in normal dietary levels. So that was very appealing to me, that it's safe. It's 75% of women who are menopausal do not want to take HRT, myself included, for various reasons. And we don't have to. If we just ate what we needed to eat, then we wouldn't get to this stage. And it's really important to start when you're in the perimenopausal phase, because...
And what is perimenopausal phase?
The perimenopausal is before you hit full menopausal. So it can start anywhere from your early 40s, 45 sort of age, where you start getting the symptoms, but you haven't. The menopause is when you've finished your last menstrual cycle, whereas perimenopause is the lead up to that, where things are just ups and downs,
all over the place. Yeah,
and you start getting brain fog and things like that during the perimenopausal stage. And that was one of those things that I noticed, because I work in a school as well in the science department. And that brain fog stops you from coping so well with all the day-to-day stuff that you're trying to juggle, especially as a parent and a mum, as well as working, as well as having a business and for me, livestock to look after as well at the end of the day. It was just quite easy to get overwhelmed. And I've since found out that estrogen helps keep those channels in the brain open where the neurotransmitters are going through the brain. So once estrogen starts dropping, those channels start to shrink and to decrease. And that's what your brain fog is because the neurotransmitters aren't getting through to where they need to get through to. And so brain fog is just like a physiological thing where your brain is shrinking. And you want to keep those channels open. So by eating a bowl of muesli every morning that's got some plant estrogens in it for you, it's just an easy win. And then you haven't fallen off the cliff before you're trying to get back up. So if you're doing it all the way through perimenopause, you're staving off the big sort of bang crash when you hit menopause. So it's really valuable to start as early as you can. And at perimenopause, you don't want to go to the doctor and say, I've got the odd this, it's a bit niggly, I'm a bit foggy, I'm a bit, it's not HRT worthy. I don't want to be on HRT yet. And so eating plant estrogens is a perfect solution for that. And if you get to the stage where you do need HRT, then you can have that alongside your muesli. It's no problem. There's no sort of downside to having it. So what was the question? I think I probably got completely up, rambling and ranting.
What one of the challenges you face starting the business? I mean, how long has the business been going for? Would be a good question as well, actually.
Yeah, I think in the concept of it was 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a competition in Scotland called the Scottish Edge, and I entered that and won the wild card for innovation because the judges deemed this idea a very real solution to a very real problem. And so that was the, okay, it's not just me.
The validation, yes.
Yeah, because lots of women actually end up losing their jobs because they can't cope with menopause in the workplace. And that's being recognised now, and there are policies coming in, which is great. But up until then, menopause hits women when they're at the peak of their careers. If you've sacrificed a lot in your lifetime to be, a top lawyer or a top surgeon or a pilot or something like that, and you get to the stage where you're looking down and just say, I can't remember what I was doing there. Did I connect that bit or didn't I connect that bit? Or is that plane coming in or not? Air traffic control. It's just like, oh, man, hang on a minute. You just, you can't do it. You just can't do it because the connectivity is just physically not there. And so it's a real problem. And 1 million women a year lose their entire careers just because they can't cope with their menopause symptoms, which is so wrong, And in days gone, of course, we weren't working in our 40s and 50s. We were.
That is true. I was saying, what's changed historically? So what's changed is obviously, women would be childbearing, become mothers, and then that was it. They'd be locked away in the house, so no one would know these symptoms were coming on, isn't it? It's the kids and their mum who would face them. Whereas if you're in a business environment, it's very evident when something is not right. Yeah.
So women weren't working historically. And in further days gone by, if somebody was really struggling and was completely losing the plot, they were put into an asylum, And prior to that, our longevity wasn't that long. I mean, historically, with improvements in hygiene and medicine and things like that, we are living a lot longer. But we were probably dead by 30, 40 as a human being before too much intervention. Not that long ago. So we weren't getting to this stage in life either. It wasn't, nature hasn't programmed us to actually go on to in a childbearing capacity. So as far as nature's concerned, the job is done.
Yeah. So you won the award, and then it was like, right, we can do this. We're now bootstrapping and launching this business.
Yeah. So the award came with a £10,000 grant. And I said with that I was going to make one product or two products and get them on the shelf ready to launch in 2023. And I got 3 products on the shelf and all the website made and the e-commerce site and all the rest of it. And so by November 2023, it was all ready to go. And I made it into a subscription because, as with HRT, you have to replace your missing biological estrogen on a daily basis, which means you have to be eating it. So unless you're going to eat tofu and lots of fresh veggies and things like that, then having something in the cupboard that's an easy go-to, because we're at work, we're busy, I just thought if I make it into a subscription so it arrives every month, you don't have to think about it, put it in the cupboard and it's there when you need it on a daily basis, then that just ticks that box and it's just one less stress and hassle that you have to think of.
And also developing that habit, isn't it? That healthy habit. If it's on a subscription model, then there's the consistency piece. Whereas if you just order it once, it's the same like even taking your medication, etc. If there isn't that reminder for you to take it, then you won't continue on that journey.
No, it's too easy. We're too busy. There's just too much going on. And we're probably in a really bad mood,
Yeah,
we're grumpy.
Yeah.
We're 50. We're allowed to be grumpy, and I'm quite enjoying it.
I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't say, so I've worked in businesses where obviously the menopause policies have come in, the awareness, the talks have happened, which I think is really important. But then what I've also seen is the other side where just loads of women just going on HRT. And I've always been a fan of, okay, what other solutions are there? Is there something with nutrition? Is there something with health? Could that not be the first step versus going directly, to taking HRT? So to know that actually you've taken the time to say there is a different option, there is a different way that is probably better for your body in the long run I think is great, because there's a tendency to always go towards the easier option. We'll just ingest something, we'll inject something into us, or there's a patch, there's something like that.
Yeah. Well, but that is the narrative that we've been given as well, because there wasn't another option. So to say to people, yeah, you can do it through nutrition, but you have to eat tofu every day. It's just not going to happen.
No.
People know it exists.
Not sexy.
Yeah. Well, well, I live in Scotland, and even if we deep fat fry it, nobody's going to eat tofu in Scotland. It's just not going to happen. So I was just like, it has to be something that you either already eat or is a staple in a Western diet. So hence a breakfast cereal, hence a loaf of bread, hence a protein bar. Because it's just got to be something you don't have to change your life to incorporate. And that was important to me. And the narrative has been, HRT's great, HRT's safe, just do it. But there's a lot of resistance within a lot of us that actually says, do you know what? I don't feel like I really need it just yet, or I don't want it, or there are other issues, and there are other issues. Some people are so dependent on it, they're still on it when they're 70 and 80 because they don't go through their menopause fully. I want to go through my menopause and come out the other side and it just be done and dusted with as little pain as possible. I don't want to find that I can't come off my HRT at some stage because I didn't go through the process. My body didn't adjust. So there's things like that. But yeah, I mean, people need to know that it exists in the world. So when I've spoken to GPs about it, they say invariably, if somebody comes in and I have to say to them, I think it's time for HRT, they will always say, is there anything else we can try first? And it's just like, right, we all do feel like this. Let's just do this. Let's just put something out into the market that everyone can find and Google and, start taking that actually does that job. And you don't have to go down the pharmaceutical route so quickly, if at all. Because all of our journeys are so different, depending on how much exercise we do, depending on what else we eat in our daily life, depending what our stress levels are, just our biology is all so different. We all have such different experiences that it's not, one size fits all. Then you may well find that you do need to have HRT. I may well find that I still need to have HRT. But amazingly, I'm completely symptom free. And I had a bit of a road test the other day. I went to London for 4 days and I didn't take my muesli with me because it just seemed a bit rude to eat my muesli in a hotel, in their restaurant. And because I felt like I'm symptom free, I just thought I haven't really started my menopause journey yet. It must still be coming somewhere down the road. That was a blip when I had all the joint pain and stuff, because I haven't had anything since. And after about day 2 or 3, I was just getting everything, just the whole sort of like hot sweats, brain fog, just my whole body just started to hurt inside and out. And I was just like, oh my God. By the time I was on the train home, and this was day 5, I was just like in a not very good state at all. So actually, I think my menopause journey is well on its way. And I wasn't at all happy with how I felt. I was in physical pain as well as sort of like mentally just not okay. And the low mood and anxiety were just such a surprise to me. I was just like, just not okay. I just don't want to get out of bed. I just hate everybody. Could murder my family quite happily. It's just like, wow, that's just 5 days of not eating my muesli. Holy cow. So it's well on its way.
Yeah.
And I'm
but also the consistency, isn't it, Charlotte?
Yeah. So yeah, it's one of those things where I can say, hand on heart, I've done it with just diet alone, and I'm not religious about my diet. I'm not very good at it. I still, like I say, I'll be first in the queue for a cinnamon bun. You know, I think by and large, I do eat a lot of broccoli and I do eat my muesli every day. So I think maybe those two things combined are just enough, just to
And it's
keep me
about
going.
balance. I think if you have great nutrition and once in a while you indulge, life is too short, isn't it? You have to also eat some of the things that you love. It's when that one cinnamon bun turns into 5 or 6.
It's a good job they don't sell them in packs of 6, because I would eat them. I would eat them.
Exactly. Let's talk about how networking has played a role in the growth of your business as well. We talked about By Women Build, so shout out to them as well, bringing women together. In what ways are you building your community in terms of not just talking about menopause, but as a businesswoman and founder?
There is a lot of help out there for women in business at the moment, and people are understanding that it's quite hard for us to get investment, things like that. So that there is a spotlight being shone on those kind of issues for us, which brings us together as a female community of founders, which is great. But social media and things like that are where you actually end up connecting with other ladies who aren't in the business world, who are just going through what you're going through and are looking for solutions and looking for answers by Googling menopause stuff. I would love to have more of a community. I would like to make a Mena community. It's one of those things that when there's another 12 hours in the day, I might actually be able to spend some time doing. But at the moment, it's just through social media and my social media sites that I'm connecting with people and talking to people. But, I think women are sticking together a bit more. I think one of the great things about getting to our menopausal age is we are all in our 50s and we don't take much rubbish anymore. I remember hitting 40 and just being much more assertive about things and just thinking, no, I'm not doing that. How that's an unreasonable thing to, ask me. And I just became much more empowered. And then I got to 50 and I was like, just try it. Just, don't make me hurt you. This is not happening. It's just like, wow, I'm really enjoying being 50 and being empowered. And I think because this is our menopausal years and lots of us are coming to this stage, we're going, come on, this is not okay. We are uniting as a female cohort and just going, you have to do something about this. People keep saying, if this had been happening to men all these years, it wouldn't be an issue anymore. They'd have
there would have been something. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So things like, I try and get involved with as many women networking things as I can. So I was part of Women's Enterprise Week, which celebrates women in business. And I did their Women's Launch Lab, which was just 10 of us in the whole country who started businesses who are just trying to do fabulous things, with our businesses for social good, and it's there. You just have to tap into those things. You just have to be quite proactive about it. I could do better, I'm sure, but it's a fine line of how many hours there are in a day. And I really struggle with that because it's still just me in the business at the minute. And I just outsource what I can because I'm not a techie human being and I loathe and detest those things. Same with accounts and those sorts of things. I just want to be creating things with plants. Yeah, it's the networking thing of it is so valuable in as much as like the By Women Build site that we were talking about. Just the questions that people are asking in our forum every day just makes you realize that we're all, up against lots of challenges that we don't even realize exist until we come up against them. And then we're just like, what's that? How do we deal with that? Has anyone had to do this before? Because I'm not sure about this. And it's just like, oh, good. Somebody else is
going through it.
Yeah. That's okay. It's not just me. So, yeah.
And you've touched on sorry, go ahead.
No, I just going to say that it is really important. Really important.
Yeah. And you've touched on the fact of, the fact that you're a one-man band in the business it's the reality. And you've accepted that, you've got a great idea. You've launched your business. So you just started. You are taking advantage of any outsourcing. So if you don't know a certain skill, outsource, because why pretend to be an expert when you're not? Mm-hmm. And those are like the little things which sometimes I feel as women are a barrier to even starting a business in the first place, we're thinking of all the things that we don't have versus actually what do I have to hand, which I think is a strength of yours. What am I good at? Let me just go ahead with this idea. What problem am I trying to solve and going ahead with it?
Yeah, definitely. I learned that very quickly. I mean, I could spend an awful lot of time on a tax return and be weeping at the end of it. I'm just like, I can't do this. I can't. It's just taking too long. And I outsource it to my accountant, who started as a meat box customer. So she didn't get paid in cash. She took lamb.
I love this.
And that's how we did it, because I couldn't afford to pay her. But she was just like, I really believe in what you're doing. And she was a woman in, we have something up here called Grow Biz with a B-I-Z on the end of it. And it's a local business community who are very supportive, who have, women's only sort of meet-up networking nights and stuff. And they were a great support at the beginning. And I met her at one of those. And I just happened to sort of say over a scone, gosh, I really could do with an accountant. And she was like, I really love your products. I really love what you do. I'll take a meat box instead of cash. And I was like, done, totally done.
Bring you on board.
Yeah. So I bartered where I can. It's even happening now. I do photo shoots and stuff. And again, if it's a female who's doing it, she's just like, right, well, look, this is what I need to eat. So this is what it's going to cost. But I'll take the rest of it in menopause products, please. It's just like, done. That's fine. We'll do that.
I mean, Lucy was talking about it with her socks, where at the beginning she was giving away socks, isn't it? In terms of, I'm not generating as much revenue now, but I'll give you some socks instead. And like, brilliant. We'll take the socks. You can never have enough socks, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of what you have to do. There's always a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. And don't waste your time trying to do things you can't do, or will make a mess of. Just let somebody else do it. And you never know, they might be looking for you. They might be looking for exactly your products. So just put it out there, just ask the question. The worst they can do is say no, and you're no worse off.
Yeah, definitely. Reflecting on your journey so far, so what are some key lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur?
So the one thing which I think is really important is you have to look after yourself, because it's very easy to get burnt out and overwhelmed and just frazzled and just stop coping, especially when you're a woman, you've got kids, you've probably got another part-time job, and you're starting to start a business, and you're up against, all the challenges of being a female trying to start a business in a man's world. So you need to be mentally and physically strong. So I meditate morning and night. And I started doing that in lockdown with my yoga teacher, when she said, look, let's get up at 6:30 every morning for 40 days, do it for 40 days straight. There is never, ever going to be this opportunity again, probably in our lifetimes, when we're all here every morning and we can just do this. And that's what we did. And it was so beneficial that I was just like, I'm quite addicted to it. I have to do it every day, because that just resets me. And in the morning, I'm grateful for everything that I have achieved and how far I've come. And, the fact that it is sunny this morning, and that there is a roof over my head, and the kids are well, and blah, blah, blah. And it just brings you back to earth, and it just stops you worrying about the tax return and the corporation tax and the blah, blah, blah. It's just like the real stuff, just life. It just brings you back to zero. So I think actually looking after yourself is actually the first thing that you have to do, because when you're mentally and you're physically strong, then you can cope with all of this. And if you're not, then it's a hiding to nothing, and you're miserable and you won't last it. You just won't want to do it. It'll be too much. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I do is take all the help that's offered. So for me, it's lots of women networking type things, and women investment groups, and all those things online that you can tap into and become members of, because that is an enormous source of information as well as support. And the third thing that I think I've learned is that never ever assume about things. So on times when I have outsourced things, like say making the Mena-pause, and I've drafted my children in to just, finish packing and wrapping, at the end of the day or something, and I say, just put the labels on the bars and then just put them in that box over there. And to my mind, that means put the labels along the length of the bar. But they thought just like at a 90-degree angle, so it wrapped all around, looked lovely. And I was just like, it's just like, just don't assume people think the same way that you do or that they understand it. And with the livestock, I've had it with butchers as well. I've sent the carcass in and said, dudes, this, and this, thinking I was going to get, this back. And then like a whole slab of meat arrives. So it's just like, what's that? That's not chops. It's just like, that's like, it's just like, just don't assume that people hear what you're trying to describe or have the same perspective as you do about things. You really need to make sure that you told them exactly what it is you want and explain it as fully as you can, and maybe even write it down so that when they go, oh, you never said that, you just go, yes, I did. Here's the picture. So, never assume. And never assume that you can't do something or that person's going to say no. Just at least ask. If you're not knocking on the door, nobody knows you want to come in.
Exactly that. Yeah. I'm just thinking about the never assume. I live and die by that. Never assume anything. You have to be as specific as possible and be clear of your intentions, because you never know what the other person is thinking, how they've interpreted it. It's just amazing, isn't it? These kind of things.
It really is. That has been one of right from the beginning. That was one of the real steep learning curves. It was just like, is it me? Do I just not speak clearly? Am I not saying this right? Because just about everything I asked for, I was just getting not what I asked for back. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to make sure that there's no error here for some misinterpretation. Yeah, it was a real learning curve, that one.
See the industry evolving. At what role do you think menopause-friendly food will play in shaping this future?
I think in a minute, it's not just going to be me that's the only person who's making menopause food. I think in a minute, the big boys are going to wake up and they're going to realize just how valuable that is for us to have menopause food on the market. Half of me will be quite sad about that and half of me will be really pleased, because at the end of the day, I would much rather everybody had a symptom-free menopause just by what they ate, because there's no reason for them not to. So that would be an absolute win. If we got to the stage where we were like the ladies in Japan and we didn't even think about it, menopause was the days of doom of menopause were a long distant memory. That would be amazing. That would be fantastic. But obviously the big boys have got a much bigger marketing budget than me and the capacity to manufacture and all the rest of it. And so they'll maybe just completely wipe me out as soon as it all starts. But even if what I did was just start the conversation and start, people thinking and understanding that you can do it with diet alone. And that concept was accepted by us as a nation and as women, then that's fine. Job done. That's great.
You're the one to start the conversation, I guess, isn't it? Be the one, the trailblazer in that too. Hindsight is always an interesting thing, Charlotte. So you've had a pharmaceutical background and now you're a business owner, founder. For the audience who's listening, what are some of the tips that you would give? Because I feel we live in a society where, especially for the young people coming up, where there's this pressure for them to study something, etc., etc. And as we know, you live then 20, 30, 40 years and you realize connecting the dots, actually what really mattered in terms of your education or experience. What are some of the tips that you would give in terms of your background and what's led you to this point as to what will serve them in the future?
Well, I actually think whatever you do in life is probably meant to be somewhere along the line, and it plays part in getting you to your end point. So I never wanted to be in pharmaceuticals. I'm a geologist by education, but I didn't want to go down a mine or work in a quarry. And so I ended up in a software sales job, which was just so scorchingly boring. That was just like, oh my God. And then there was a better sales job with pharmaceuticals and you got a company car. So I just went, oh, that's a better deal.
I like that, yeah.
And then you end up in that medical world, and all the sort of the science that I had from geology translated very easily into medical science, because it's the same science, it's just a different application. And so you end up in that world of medicine. And then you end up going, well, hang on a minute. Why are we giving people all these drugs? I had an antidepressant and a hypertensive drug that I was talking to doctors about all the time. And the whole time I'm just thinking, they weren't eating takeaways every day and white bread and iron brew. I think they'd find that they were actually much happier.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they wouldn't be so overweight. You know, they wouldn't be struggling with all these other conditions that they were finding that they was manifesting in their body. Why aren't we saying it's time to change your diet instead of here's your antidepressant? It's just like, why are we papering over the cracks instead of dealing with the issue? So I became so disillusioned with just how we do medicine that I was just like, I'm not doing this. And then I worked in a cancer hospice as a therapist and realized that people's psychology was so important to how they fared during their illness. Their psychology basically became their biology. Those who were given a diagnosis of cancer who just said, well, that's me done then, died really quickly. And those who said, it's not getting me and I'm going to, fight it all the way, lived so much longer, had much less pain, were in much better, state physically and mentally. And it was so noticeable that I was just like, well, that's really interesting. So your psychology, plays a massive part of what happens in your body, which is why you need to keep it nourished and why you need to look after yourself on a mental and physical, basis. So that was really useful. And then I had my own children, so I didn't go back to work in pharmaceuticals as I thought I might and just wanted a part-time, term-time job. So I got a job in a school in the science department. And again, that put me in a lab and all the scientific things of sort of like being quite particular about how you formulate things. I'm in charge of potions and explosions where I work because I'm the technician. And so I was surrounded by bottles of chemicals and potions. And again, it brings you back to, gosh, everything we put into our body is a chemical. Every piece of food is a chemical and it causes a chemical reaction somewhere in your body, whether it gives you potassium or magnesium or something like that, that it then does a job where a neurotransmitter can go from one bit to another. It's all chemistry. It's not just biology, it's all there. So again, that was another sort of thing where it keeps it all in you're building all those little building blocks of where you get to today, where plant medicine is what I love. I love that I can walk down my hedgerows and pick and eat things that help with high blood pressure or help with depression or help with digestive enzymes or any of those things. Plants around us all have all these things. It's just that pharmaceuticals take those ingredients. I think it's something like 73% of pharmaceuticals are plant-based. So they extract those active ingredients, super concentrate them and put them into a pill or a capsule. And then you take them when you've got to a chronic disease state. But if you had those in your diet on a daily basis, you wouldn't be getting to that chronic disease state. So if we were just eating in line with our biology, in line with what nature already gives us, nature's already got all the answers. We just don't eat like that anymore. We don't eat out of the hedges. We don't dig up roots. We don't, powder acorns and, we just don't eat like that anymore because we have supermarkets. So that all my work experiences, all my journey has brought me to this, to start a business to hopefully help millions of women change their menopause experience. So it's all been valuable. So don't think it's a rubbish job. It'll be teaching you something somewhere along the line. It will be valuable. It just might not appear like that at the time.
And everything you've described, just there's one thread I think that was singing right through is you're very curious and observant as well. I think that's it. Be curious and observant and want to learn and want to understand the why behind things is a good way of learning and open to different opportunities. If you had just narrowed yourself down and said, okay, I'm a geologist now, I'm going to go down a quarry in a mine, that would have been your life. But you said, there must be something else.
No thanks.
No thanks. Not for me as well. That's really key.
Yeah.
We've come down to the part of the show where we ask our guests to leave 3 Trailblazer takeaway tips, tips to guide away for those that maybe just said, I'm going to skip all the way to the end. What's Charlotte got to offer in terms of tips? What would you share?
Okay, well, I think I've probably already done them in the midst of our chat. But the first one would be to look after yourself. Just make sure your mind, body, and soul is all taken care of, because then you can achieve anything, basically. And it's all there for the taking. I don't really believe that we can't do things, because even when you think I can't afford to do something, you can barter, you can haggle, you can offer your services another way. Take all the help you can. That's another tip. Just accept help. Don't think that you're alone. Don't think that you can't ask somebody to help you, because more often than not, they'd rather help you than see you struggling. And don't assume. Don't assume. Don't assume that people have understood what you've told them.
Your labeling might go wrong.
Yes, exactly. So no, those would be my tips, unfortunately. So yeah.
Charlotte, this has been amazing. It's been a very wholesome conversation. Menopause is, I don't want it to be just a buzzword, but people understand what it means in terms of the journey of being a woman. That's the most important part. And the fact that there are options out there that are outside of taking drugs. Taking care of your body is so important, whether you're a man or a woman. But in this specific case, for women, we need to take care of our bodies. So thank you so much for sharing your story, creating an amazing product. I'll definitely put it in the show notes. And thank you so much.
No, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For the audience, this has been the Trailblazers Experience podcast. Tell another woman about the podcast, and remember to follow, subscribe, share, and like. Until next time, thank you.